Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Dean here today with Burn 1, and this is going to be a little bit different for you guys, right? This is going to be... I was really struggling over what to do, like, right? What kind of content to do. I want to do, like, these things about, like, do you mill run? Do you torch? How to get better, right? And ultimately, why teach a man... Why give you, like, a small snippet when I can teach you how to go find some of those snippets for yourself? So... I'm going to call this one How to Get Good. This is, if you live life normally, you probably know these already. These are pretty basic, but I think that these are definitely the kind of things you need to do to, like, build a strong foundation. What I mean by basic, I mean, like, so, like, think about this, right? What's skill? What is skill? What do we mean when somebody is skillful at the game? We think about their adaptability, right? So, like, when they're faced with a different situation, how quickly do they recognize the correct lines, right? When you're in a tournament, right? Maybe you see something you've never seen before. I know the actual game that got me my invite to Worlds back in 2019 was the deciding turn. The turn that I think wrapped everything up was I have a 3-card deck with 1 climax. My opponent's playing Yami. I am pretty much dead if I don't horribly sack him. I play down a top check. I can, like, look at top, leave it there, put it on the bottom of the deck. My 3-card deck, I see the last climax. I move to the bottom and attack twice. And that was a decision I made, like, on the fly. So it's like I've never been in that situation, but, like, I saw that as, like, the only line. And so that's what I mean by adaptability, right? Like, when you see these things that you cannot prepare for. You just cannot, in any amount of thinking and testing, think of. But when you're given them, how quickly do you adapt correctly? And so, yeah, we have that. And then we have, like, your skill as a player, right? Like, how good are you? Not in those, like, extremely fringe scenarios, but just in, like, being able to pilot a deck in a normal thing. Like, do you get tournament fatigue, right? Like, how are you handling just the average game? And then we have the deck builder. That's a different level of skill that usually goes into, like, making meta reads before a tournament. Like, how good are you at, like, fine-tuning your deck for a given meta? How good are you at building something from nothing? Are you, like, one of the innovators? Those people get a little bit less recognition, and those aren't really needed to top, but it is nice to be able, to build up at least that. I think that's the more fun part of games, but that's me. So let's say you're trying to get good, right? How do you do it? Well, you got to be prepared for a grind, okay? Even natural talent needs to be molded, okay? So when you start off, don't expect to be, even if you're good at another game, don't expect to come in just, like, destroy everyone in this other game, right? And your first card game will always take the longest. If Weiss is your first card game, it's, I think I remember way back when in probably 2014 or 13 or something, I read some guy's report about Pokemon. He picked up Pokemon on the side, and he said, like, he'd, like, learn Magic, and the first card game you learn, he claimed, this is my source, 8 years ago, was going to take you about 2 to 3 years. It's going to take you about 2 to 3 years to get good at, just because there's so many random skill sets specific to card games that you're going to have to kind of, like, learn, right? And then after that, you should be able to learn other card games, he said, in about 6 to 8 months. So to play at, like, a high proficiency level, 2 to 3 years, and then after that, 6 to 8 months when you go to other card games. And always approach with an attitude to learn. You can't just go in. I've seen some crazy things from people, right? Like, you get the people at locals, and they just want to win. They don't care that they're new. They just want to, like, magically win. They buy a deck. They're like, why is my deck not winning? Well, you got to actually be good at it, right? Like, you got to, like, learn how to play. And you got to keep a positive attitude, at least at the beginning. I know I'm not the best person to say that sometimes. But you got to keep a positive attitude and try to learn from, like, the things that happen in the game, right? Like, you can't just be like, oh, I got sacked. Well, think about, like, well, what point did the game start to spiral out of control? And definitely, go through those and try to think about that. And always be looking for, like, advice, I think, especially when you first start. Be like, okay, so where in that game, like, what went wrong? Or what can we do better, right? Because I feel like some people, they don't like to talk after the games. That's fine, but I feel that ultimately, if you're trying to get better, you want to be talking. bouncing stuff off about like what happened in the game, like what points were happening, what was your opponent doing, possibly to hurt you, or what do they think was going on. Yeah, that's enough for that one. And let's see, life is about choices. Okay, so if you want to get good at card games, just know that you gotta give up some stuff. You gotta give up some time, and you gotta give up some money. You can't just, I don't know, you can't have like 50 billion hobbies. I mean, you can definitely, like, don't let this thing consume your life, but just know that you will have to dedicate time in your life to it to be good, right? So you got to schedule time for locals, right? Like maybe just 1 hour a week, usually a little bit extra, right? Well, 1 hour a week. What am I talking about? 3 to 4 hours a week usually, or sometimes if you really unlucky with this game, maybe just like an hour or two a week on like playing games on like the camera on Discord. So yeah, definitely trying to go to locals, trying to be there, and try to focus on one physical card game. Maybe play a second digital one. You can maybe play Pokemon TCGO, Hearthstone. I know League of Legends has the one, and Shadowverse. I think those are all good options. And the reason is there's less financial and time strain. Like, right, if you try to pick up multiple physical card games, locals can overlap. You got to go to the shop. There's driving there. There's also buying the cards. It doesn't matter like how cheap some of these games are. Multiple card games are pretty expensive if you start going hard in them, right? Like definitely try. You could feel free to try them out, but like when you're especially starting off, if you're trying to juggle multiple card games, right, it gets expensive fast. Just awful. But the thing is when you play these different card games, the skills are transferable, and that's definitely nice. But so, like, if you're playing, like, a digital card game, like Hearthstone, believe it or not, some of the skills you learn there, as long as you're trying to learn instead of just putting cards down, will transfer over to other card games such as Weiss. And so that's why that's sort of kind of nice to have a digital card game on the side for when, people aren't there for locals. Okay, and then you know what else? In the idea of time, we have consuming content. The newer you are, the more there is to gain. When you start off, it does not matter what you watch. Everything is, any content creator out there pretty much probably has played this game more than you at the beginning. I feel like Weiss especially. Weiss is like filled with boomers that is, until the most recent thing. A lot of the content creators for Weiss are like definitely, we've been in the community for a long time. But do not believe everything you see here. Just definitely consume and think, but verify with results, right? If some guy goes, oh my god, dude, my deck is insane, and like he shows you some deck and you don't know what's going on, right? Like you're new and you see, I don't know, like a Mob Psycho deck and you're like, oh, that's insane. Well, if you can, if it's affordable, or on Weiss Fight, which is something that thankfully we do have, don't be afraid to sleeve it up, right? Like I'm not going to tell you to just like blindly follow them, but definitely, like, if they tell you something and you don't know, don't be afraid to go out and try it, right? Like, even if you just disagree, like, try it out, see what they're saying, and maybe they're wrong, maybe they're right. And, yeah, just don't be afraid to disagree. I'm going to be honest, a lot of us content creators out there, I feel like, actually, just a lot of the content creators out there in general, especially for this game, there's a very fast cycle of releases. And content creators are all about pushing out decks as fast as humanly possible at the beginning, right? Because it's like, oh no, this new set's dropping. Well, we want to be ahead of the curve on the news, so we're going to drop out this. And it's usually like, that's why a lot of the decks I feel like aren't very spicy at the beginning. So yeah, if you disagree with like a list that you saw on Teresa Collectibles or PGH Weiss or even here, just don't feel afraid to disagree. Definitely just try it out though, and who knows, maybe you'll learn something from that. And this one's a little absurd. Take a stats class. I don't think that that's really necessary, but I do think that like statistics is your strongest weapon in any card game, not just this, in Pokemon, in Yu-Gi-Oh! It just comes down to deck building, comes down to statistics. The deck you bring into the room comes down to statistics. How you navigate, especially in a game like Weiss with so much card counting. And it helps you with quickly assessing what lines are the most optimal, and just always be flexible. Don't if you see that like, wow, this line's 14% likely to get me something, but this one's actually like 7% likely to win the game. Just always be willing to make those calls. And maximize your ability to learn going into that. So the more cards you sleeve, the more you can learn. This is why this game is way better than some of the others for at least what you can do. You can buy a playset on release for like, I know this is absurd, but card games are expensive, like $100 and I think like $80. A lot of the collectors have stepped out, so it might be like even closer to $200 at this point. And the more cards you feel in sleeves, like, right, if you feel a bad card, why is it bad? If you feel a good card, why is it good? Different strategies. Wow, clean cut's good, but guess what? Clean cut doesn't work with standby. Why is that? Well, because these two things, they're inherently like fighting each other. And it's all about sleeving as many things as you can to feel as much as you can, because different experiences will definitely like lay a solid foundation. I personally think older formats can also help your fundamentals. So think about this. I mean, everyone's heard me like complain about this game recently with some of the design philosophies that have changed, right? The faster formats to me, yeah, when you're playing them, you can like get some wins off of just like how strong some of the cards are. But I feel like some of the older formats can teach you different like layers of fundamentals, because there's formats where it's all about the board. There's formats where it's all about advantage, accruing resources for multiple combos, maximizing your... Oh, sorry about that. Wow. Maximizing your resources for like, like elongating the level 2 game as much as humanly possible. And these are all fundamentals that you'll still bring into the game, even with like the faster meta and everything. Like, these are still things that like are in the game and that you can bring, but they're not going to be as pronounced. Like, you're not going to see them as much. And I feel like it's going to be harder to like appreciate like the strengths of these things off of just playing like the modern format. But don't be stuck in the past or the present. Just because you're playing modern Weiss, don't be afraid to play old Weiss. And just because you're playing old Weiss and you're enjoying old decks, you got to stay up with the present. There is power creep. The game does move forward. But there is something to learn from the past, and there's definitely something to learn from the present. And the idea is to just kind of like absorb all of that as possible. Once again, I know old sets are expensive. I don't expect people to own them. So Weiss Fight especially is a good resource. And I believe there's another client that's getting on its way out. And I think that's it. I think that's all I've got to tell you guys, right? Like, this is pretty basic. You can take these anywhere. You can apply them to anything in life. But we definitely focus more on card games here. So hopefully you guys take this. Hopefully somebody out there is new to the game. They watch this. They apply it. And maybe in a year or two, you guys come up to a regional and I see you guys topping. That'd be pretty cool. But until next time, this is Dean, signing out.